What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Draft Report. In today's video, we'll be doing our second mock draft of the year, and this will be our post-combine mock draft. So we'll be updating guys' draft stocks based on how they ran in the 40, what they measured in at, what they weighed in at, all that stuff will be factored in, and some draft stocks definitely changed this week. So let's get into it. One thing that didn't change is the first three picks for me. I still think it's going to be Caleb Williams. And then at 2, there's a lot of chatter about it potentially being, Jaden Daniels, but I just don't think it's going to be that. I think it's going to be Drake May. He is the prototypical quarterback. He's the guy, that has the arm talent and can run a complete offense. He has more mobility than a lot of people think. And even though Jaden Daniels is the more electric runner, I think Drake May has the higher upside to be a true star passer at the next level. But then the Patriots, I'm not the biggest Jaden Daniels guy, so it would make sense for them to go Marvin Harrison, but I do think they will end up going Jaden Daniels just because they need a quarterback. They can't roll out next year with Mac Jones. And are you really signing Kirk Cousins or Jacoby Brissett or something like that in free agency as your future quarterback? No. So I think it will be Jaden Daniels, even though I might not be the highest on him. I think that is where they're going to go to. And then at 4, I think everyone does this in every mock draft. Marvin Harrison Jr. to the Cardinals, just too easy of a fit. You get Marvin Harrison with a great quarterback in Kyler Murray. It's a need of theirs because their only real receiver is Marquise Brown, and he's nothing amazing. Michael Wilson had a solid year last year, but they're no Marvin Harrison Jr., so easy fit there. And then really the draft starts at 5 for me, and there's so many ways the Chargers could go here. I could definitely see a trade out. I could definitely see them going Malik Neighbors, Brock Bowers is in play, a corner's in play, an edge rusher's in play. There's a lot of stuff there for them. They could take really any position outside of quarterback, but I think it will be Joe Alt. Even though Rashawn Slater is a solid left tackle right now, I think you could kick him over to the right side or kick Alt over the right side. But you're getting a day one pass protector that you can put on an island while also possessing pretty solid run blocking ability. Even though Greg Roman might want a little bit more powerful of a run blocker, you're getting a day one elite pass protector. So I think you got to do that. Joe Alt at 5. And then the Giants, I think they're going to go receiver as long as Jaden Daniels doesn't fall to them. I could see them going quarterback, but it's a little early for McCarthy. And then it's kind of between Neighbors, potentially Bowers, and Odunze. I think from what people were saying at the Combine, I think teams are a lot higher on Neighbors than we previously thought, and most teams have him as wide receiver 2. Some teams even have him as receiver 1 over Harrison, so I think Neighbors is a little bit above Odunze on most boards, so he does go to the Giants. He's a field-stretching option who has elite speed, but also can make a lot of people miss with the ball in his hands. He's so explosive, getting off the line, in and out of his breaks. He's a full package, even though he's maybe not the biggest guy in contested catch situations. And then the Titans, who before were pretty much always mocked at linemen, I think is actually going to switch to Rome Odunze because we heard their GM and owner, I believe, say we want to get playmakers, we want speed, we want to be like the Dolphins, running out there with a ton of playmakers on the outside. They didn't really bring up the trenches, even though that's kind of their biggest weakness. I think they want to get a playmaker and give Brian Callahan his Jamar Chase in a sense. So then we get to the Falcons, and I feel like this is another one that's mocked every time. Edge rusher Dallas Turner. There were some questions kind of before the Combine of how elite he truly is, and he didn't look the best at Alabama sometimes, but he shut those down at the Combine. I mean, what did he run? 4.47 in the 40, like a 6'10 wingspan, 41-inch vert, crazy broad jump, crazy 10-yard split. I mean, the dude's just an athlete, and he had decent production at an SEC school. Was the best pass rusher at an SEC school when Will Anderson left. And I just think Dallas Turner is so elite, even if he's not maybe the most refined at this moment. And then we get to the Bears, which I kind of have always mocked Rome Odunze, but he goes ahead of them this time. So I actually think this is going to be a trade scenario with the Denver Broncos, who are kind of getting desperate. They see the board starting to slide. They sense their chance to get their quarterback of the future, and they will trade up for that quarterback. And I have them giving up their third-round pick, and then number 12 for first-round pick this year, and then next year's fifth-round pick. That matches up on the board for draft trades. So they get their quarterback of the future, and that will be J.J. McCarthy. If you don't know, I'm a Broncos fan, and I would be pretty upset if this is what ends up happening. If they have to trade up to get a quarterback and it ends up being McCarthy, he's pretty low on my board. I'm not the highest on McCarthy. I think he has a solid arm, but it's a little overrated. He's quick, but his athleticism is also overrated, and he wasn't really asked to do much in college. His accuracy's not the best. I'm not a huge JJ McCarthy guy, but I think at pick, I just feel like the Broncos, they're desperate for a quarterback. They're going to draft one, and I don't think they want to sit at 12 and take Nix or Penix. I think they want to go up and get McCarthy, who has the highest upside of those three. But that involves trading their third round pick when they're already they already don't have a ton of draft assets, so I'm not a huge fan of that trade, but that is what I see happening in this scenario where McCarthy kind of slides down the board a little bit, because a lot of people do hear rumblings that he could go at 6, go at 8, those type of things. So Broncos get McCarthy at 9, and then the Jets at number 10. I feel like this is another one, gets mocked every time. It's going to be a lineman, and I think I have Olu a little higher because he can play true left tackle, but Fuaga can be a day one starter at guard or tackle, and he's more pro ready right now. And if you have 1 year, 2 years of Aaron Rodgers, you want to get the guy that's going to be the best right now. And Fuaga is just an absolute mauler in the run game, but then can also hold his own in pass protection. Maybe not the most elite athlete, but he's still pretty solid in that aspect and can be a day one elite starter for them. And then the Vikings, I have taking Terrion Arnold, who is actually my cornerback too, but between him and Quinyon, it's close. Arnold's a guy who plays super hard against the run, but then can also defend receivers like Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas with ease. His speed at the 40 was a little slower than I thought, running in the high 4.4s, which is why I kind of have Quinyon ahead of him. But his movement skills are rare. He has good length for the position, and again, he just plays hard against the run, which I like. And then now the Bears are picking at 12 instead of 9, and I do have them just taking best player available. I know people are going to talk about the positional value of a tight end and all that stuff, but Brock Bowers, guys like this just don't come along often, and you're getting Caleb Williams. Why not get another, top 5 talent in this draft class? Brock Bowers will be an immediate contributor for day one, and I think he has all-pro level upside. Even if he's not the biggest tight end in the world, he could be that kind of oversized slot. Think of a Dalton Kincaid, but even better. And then we get to the Las Vegas Raiders, and I have them taking Byron Murphy. They just need some interior presence against stopping the run and everything. Murphy's maybe not the best run stopper because he is kind of undersized, but his movement skills are freaky. He had close to a perfect RAS score, I believe. And yeah, he's just a freaky guy. Crazy movement, crazy pass rushing ability from the interior, which will only help Max Crosby on the outside. And you get Murphy, Crosby, and then maybe Tyree Wilson takes the next step. That could be a scary defensive line for Antonio Pierce. We get to the Saints, and they just kind of take best player available, in my opinion. You get Olu Fashanu, who is a day one player at left tackle. Ryan Ramczyk might retire, so they need that tackle in there. And then you have Olu, who has one of the highest ceilings in this class if he hits, because he is just so balanced, has good athleticism, good size, good length, just all of that stuff. He's not the most refined as of now. His run blocking's pretty poor, but his pass protecting ceiling is just so high that he has to be taken in the top 15 here. And the Colts, I think in the perfect world, Bowers slides a little past and they get him, but they still get a great player. As I've mentioned, cornerback 1 on my board, Quinyon Mitchell. He went to Toledo, so not the best competition, but he's so good in zone, in off man, just attacking downhill. He's a force at the catch point. He's super physical. And then against the run, he plays decently hard. He can tackle pretty well. And then the questions were kind of him in press man because he didn't do it much in college. But then he went on and showed at the Senior Bowl that he can lock up and press man against top tier competition. So that's why I'm all in on Quinyon. I think he can win in all phases, and he's just an elite cornerback prospect. Even if he is on the older side, he ran a 4.33 at the 40. He's just a freaky dude, and a guy the Colts would love in their zone-heavy scheme. And then we get to the Seahawks, who they need an edge rusher. Jackson Powers-Johnson would definitely be a good pick. Troy Fautanu is another one who could be taken here because they need interior line. But I am going to take Jared Verse, who should go higher than this. He can win with power super easily. And then it showed at the Combine that he's more explosive than a lot of people thought. He's never going to be a guy that wins with pure speed and bends the edge, but he's a solid athlete, and he's so powerful against the run and against the pass. Then we get to the Jaguars. I have them taking Brian Thomas Jr. The Calvin Ridley experiment didn't totally work out. He might come back on a cheaper contract or something, but either way, you get Brian Thomas, who freaky guy, 6'4", 210, ran in the 4.3s, and he had a great year. This was his first year as a starter. He led the FBS in touchdowns, and obviously you had Jaden Daniels with him and Malik Neighbors on the other side, but still, to get that production from a young guy who's that freaky height, weight, speed combo, it's a great thing, and the Jaguars could definitely use that kind of deep threat for Trevor Lawrence. Then we get to the Bengals, and this is kind of a tough choice between Latham, Mims, Fatanu. It's going to be a lineman here, and I think it will be Latham. He's just so dominant at the point of attack. I like that he weighed in at 342 compared to 360 as he was previously listed. He looked pretty fluid in the drills. He was a starting bookend tackle for one of the better programs in all the country. He was a highly rated recruit. He just has everything going for him, even if he's maybe not a left tackle, like a guy who's going to shut down Micah Parsons at the next level. He is a day one starter at right tackle that is an absolute mauler in the run game and can protect Joe Burrow pretty well. And then we get to the Los Angeles Rams, and this is kind of just best player available. Leatu Latu, they were pretty poor. I think they're 29th in pressure rate last year. They weren't really getting to the quarterback. Aaron Donald's at the end of his career. I know Byron Young had a good year, and the defensive tackle that I can't remember his name, the guy from Western Kentucky. Either way, they had some decent players, but you get a guy who's going to be a plus starter from day one and actually tested better than I thought. I kind of thought he was a poor athlete, but he went out and showed that he's decent. His explosiveness in the drills wasn't great, but his overall speed and bend looked pretty good in the drills, so I like that. Leatu Latu, one of the higher floors in this draft class if you take out the injury risk, obviously. And then we get to the Steelers, who they're going to take a lineman most likely, and you get Troy Fatanu. I kind of like Mims better than Fatanu just for the upside, but the Steelers need kind of a plug-and-play interior guy right now, but he could also shift out. They just need a fifth guy on that O-line, and Fatanu's a day one starter who also has decent upside because his movement skills are freaky. He looked like a tight end moving out there in the combine, so I really like that pick for the Steelers. For Arthur Smith, that run-heavy scheme, I think he'll be pretty good. And then we get to the Dolphins, who need interior line. I think Jackson Powers-Johnson is a guy who can start at center, start at guard from day one. He's a younger guy, high upside. I really like that pick. He's like top 15 for just overall talent on my big board, but obviously he's a center, so positional value is going to push him down a little bit, but a good pick for the Dolphins, who need some O-line help. And then we get to the Eagles, who I think it's most likely that they will be taking someone in the secondary, and two guys that are sliding right now that I have higher on my board, Cooper DeJean, Nate Wiggins, two guys I really like, but I think for their system, they're bringing Vic Fangio in. They're really going to want a guy who can open up and run and cover three, but also attack against the run. They go Cooper DeJean, who would just fit so well in a zone scheme. I don't love him in like a press man or even an off man scheme, but in a heavy zone scheme, which Vic Fangio is going to want to run, I really like that fit. He's a guy that could play safety, play nickel, play corner, even play in the slot. He's just a freaky athlete, even if he's not the most, he's a little stiff. That's why I don't love him in a man scheme necessarily, but straight line speed, height, weight, all that, just elite. And then we get to the Texans, who I could definitely see maybe trading back of this pick because they don't really have a ton of needs right now, but I kind of like Jerzon Newton for them. They just could use some an interior presence to stop both the run and pass. Newton, kind of like Murphy, undersized. He didn't test at the combine. I kind of wanted to see his athleticism because I don't think he's necessarily elite, but his hand usage for someone who's only 22 years old is amazing. He has a deep bag of moves, and he can get to the quarterback rather easily, even if he's not the most explosive athlete or the biggest guy on the field. So I like that pick for the Texans. Pairing him with Will Anderson would be nice. Then we get to the Cowboys, who just need offensive line help, and you get a freaky guy in Amarius Mims. Only played like 200 snaps or something, some crazy low number of snaps in college. He was always hurt, it seemed, and then he was sitting behind guys at Georgia, but at the combine, almost 6'9", crazy wingspan, 340 pounds, and then ran like a 5 flat 40 vert jump crazy. I mean, he had almost a 10 RAS. Dude is just a freaky athlete, and he could play left tackle for them when Tyron Smith finally decides to leave, even if that is this offseason. I think he could slide in, and with Tyler Smith on that line, that's just crazy to have those two athletes on the same line. And then we get to the Packers, who I think would love Amarius Mims if he fell to them, but he goes the pick before. But they still get a good athlete, Tyler Guyton, who didn't test as well as I thought. A lot of people thought he could break 5 in the 40 at 320 pounds, but he ran like a 5.17 and just what didn't look like some crazy athlete that we saw at the Senior Bowl, but he's still a guy high upside, pretty low floor though. But the Packers love to get those athletes and they need tackle help. And then we get to the Buccaneers, who get a steal here with Nate Wiggins, a guy that ran in the 4.2s in the 40. Even though he weighed in at like 175, you just can't teach the fluidity and the length and the speed that he has. He's a special athlete, but maybe not the most refined as of now, and also pretty thin, which could cause struggles against more physical receivers. So we get to the Cardinals, who actually have another trade here with the Las Vegas Raiders, who, again, are going to be trading up for a quarterback like the Broncos did earlier. And they're going to be trading pick 44 and 77 for 27 and a 7th from the Cardinals. And the reason they will be doing this is to get that 5th-year option on a quarterback, because this was their 44th pick. So they probably weren't going to be able to get Bo Nix there, and they take Nix. Aiden O'Connell was actually decent for them last year, but his upside's not the highest. And if you can upgrade and get a 5th-year option on a guy like Bo Nix, who can come in year 1 and be a solid starter, you don't find that too often. So maybe not the highest upside guy, but I kind of like him late first round. I kind of like that fit for the Raiders. But next to Davante Adams, he could be pretty good there. And then the Bills get another guy who tested freakily at the combine. Adonai Mitchell ran in 4.37 or something like that. I was not expecting that. He did have some drop struggles and looked a little stiff in the drills, but he's a guy who's like 6'3" and can bend and burst out of his breaks. Like you just don't find a guy like that who also has that deep speed and can catch away from his frame. I really like AD Mitchell, even if his production wasn't great at 2 elite schools. I think he's a guy that can be a great player, especially next to Josh Allen. I love that fit. And then we get to the Detroit Lions, who need interior line, so they're going to go with I guess he's listed as a tackle on here, Graham Barton, a guy that can play tackle, guard, or center. I'm guessing he'll probably play guard if he goes to the Lions, but they could just use some O-line help, especially if Frank Ragnow retires. That would really help them. Then we get to the Ravens, who are a pretty zone-heavy scheme, which is why I like TJ Tampa for them. I haven't scouted Tampa, but I know he's great in zone. He's this long, speedy corner that's maybe not the most fluid in and out of his breaks, kind of like Cooper DeJean, and a guy that would excel in a zone scheme that the Ravens are projected to run. A lot of cover 3, a lot of cover 6. He could range over the top, but also play those flats. So I like TJ Tampa there. And then the 49ers, they need O-line help. It's pretty much Trent Williams and no one else. So they're going to take another guy in Jordan Morgan, who could play left side, play right side. Just a solid tackle from day one. He could use some refinement, but not a bad pick for the Niners. Get a day 1 starter. And then the Chiefs, they're going receiver. If it was me, I'd take Ladd McConkey. I think he's the next best receiver on the board. I also like Ricky Pearsall, but I think it's a little early for him. But I think the Chiefs will go Troy Franklin because they kind of have their Ladd McConkey in Travis Kelce in a way, because he's kind of an underneath guy. But McConkey did run in the 4.3s, so he's a little more of a freaky athlete than a lot of people think. But I think they will go Troy Franklin, who's kind of this field-stretching outside guy that's a little taller and a little bigger than you would think. And he's a little stiff in and out of his breaks, which is why I'm not a huge Troy Franklin fan, but you get a speedster that can catch down the field, an MVS replacement in a way. So we go over the draft: Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, Marvin Harrison, Joe Alt, Malik Neighbors, Roma Dunze, Dallas Turner, trade up for J.J. McCarthy, Talise Fuaga, Terrion Arnold, Brock Bowers, Byron Murphy, Olu Fashanu, Quinyon Mitchell, Jared Verse, Brian Thomas, J.C. Latham, Leatu Latu, Troy Fatanu, Jackson Powers Johnson, Cooper DeJean, Jerzon Newton, Amarius Mims, Guyton, Nate Wiggins, Bo Nix, Adonai Mitchell, Graham Barton, TJ Tampa, Jordan Morgan, and Troy Franklin. So that is all for the mock draft. I will later in the year start doing 2-round mock drafts, probably with some more trades. I just wanted to do those trades for quarterbacks, but I didn't really see any other spots that were huge trade-up opportunities, but obviously in the real draft, there will be more, and as we get later into the draft cycle, I'll start doing more mock drafts with trades, 2-round mock drafts, and some player ranking stuff. So if you want to see my write-ups on any players, I'll leave that in the description. Please let me know what you thought of the mock draft, and I'll see you guys in the next one.